Welcome back to the Grim and Glamorous podcast, and we are your hosts, LBG, Andrea.
Hey guys, what's up?
So, for today's episode, we will be talking about Law and Order Special Victims Unit and why Andrea is a huge fan.
I love it so much.
And why I'm just ambivalent about it. Yeah. So, we had this idea a few days ago because I was watching Law and Order by chance. It just happened to be on during the day. I'm not a huge Law and Order fan. Like, I don't sit there and watch multiple episodes. Like, if it's on, I'll watch it, like, on this particular day. But, like, I don't really see the appeal of just some of these stories outside of the fact that I think it's interesting that they talk about real life stuff. But I know there are a lot of huge fans that have seen a ton of episodes, and I know you're a big fan of Law and Order.
Yeah, I've pretty much seen at least out of the 20 seasons that they have, I want to say I've fully watched at least 14 to 15 seasons.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is, let's see, most of them on Netflix when they used to have all the episodes on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, so you're a big Law and Order fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of see the appeal of it. Like, I guess there's, like, the mystery of, you know, each individual episode, like, you're solving a crime. And I think there are a lot of shows, a lot of legal shows or police dramas that do that. But I'm kind of curious to hear your view on, like, why do you think it's so popular, and or like, why are you drawn to this, like, type of a show? You know, is it the characters? Is it the setting? Is it the stories? Like, what about Law and Order, like, makes you, like, want to like, binge watch, like, seasons? Or,
well, I want to say that, like, if you watch Law and Order SVU from the beginning to, like, what it is now, it's the same show, but I think it's a show that has evolved from one thing to another. So, like, in the beginning, it was just like, okay, all these detectives just go and they do their job, and then there's a court case at the end, and then that's it. And then, like, the second season, they added Ice-T. So Ice-T was, like, I guess a big... Because I remember a long time ago, like, when I didn't used to watch Law and Order SVU, and their big selling point was that Ice-T was on the show. Ice-T joining the cast. Law and Order SVU. Catch Ice-T. You know, Thursday nights at 10 on Law and Order SVU. So they added him as a detective, which also added a lot of, like, comical things to it, because he plays Detective Finn Tutuola, and Finn is, like, so, like, street, and, like, because he came from narcotics, like, that's his background in the story, that he came from the narcotics department, and then he transferred to special victims, and, like, he's kind of like the cool one, like the cool detective in it.
Yeah,
so,
I noticed he brings a lot of personality to it.
Yeah.
And I think you talking about his background, that he sort of transferred into this unit.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, because I notice on the show a lot of times he's, like, asking questions about, like, motives or suspects. Like, he doesn't really get what's going on, and then he's just like, okay, so, like, you mean... There's actually a John Mulaney, the comedian. He has a bit about Law and Order SVU and Ice-T. Mm-hmm. That Ice-T's always, like, he comes up with these, like, crazy analogies or something.
Yeah.
So, and I think that is kind of funny, but he does add an element of personality that I think the other characters don't have. But to me, like, it makes the show better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, he does. Like, he'll have these, like, I mean, obviously the writers will give him these, like, one-liners that are just like, what? Like, they're just kind of funny. And so it adds that little bit of like comedy to
Mm-hmm.
that. And they partner him up with John Munch, which I think he has been a detective in like the other like Law and Order like series. Like it's kind of funny like how they pair them up together in the series,
Mm-hmm.
and like they try to like work with each other. Like I think that's pretty funny. So there's that. They also have Benson and Stabler. They're partnered up together, and they are like the couple that you want to happen, but also in the show, Stabler's married and has like, I don't remember, like 5 kids or something like that. So like you want them to get together, and then like you're also like, but wait, he's married, but he's also getting a divorce. So like
There's sort of that
there's yeah.
drama about the two of them.
Yeah, which obviously like it doesn't happen ever in the show. But for some reason you just put them together because they're like awesome partners. But yeah, like nothing ever happens. But every once in a while, like in certain seasons, they'll give like, you know, they'll throw something in there. So you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God, like it's finally happened. They've finally gotten together, but no, they're just being, detectives.
What about like okay, like my main thing about why I'm not a big fan of the show? I don't hate it, but it's not one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I have shows where I can watch them any day of the week, anytime. I can just throw it on and I'll enjoy watching it, even if I've seen it 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me, like there's like that upper echelon of like shows that I consider, like untouchable. Like they're always going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it's personal taste, so everybody has a different
Right.
set of shows or movies that fits that. To me, like just the nature of the crimes and like how gruesome and like their murders and like you know people finding bodies and um, like to me like that just is like heavy to deal with. Like if you're binge watching like season after season, like you kind of have to like numb yourself to that.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about that type of a show um, that makes it watchable? Because there are other shows that are like that aren't as good.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are medical dramas. Like I was a big fan of House, and
Oh yeah.
not everybody liked it.
Mm-hmm.
People say, "Oh, it's too graphic. It's too there's too much blood. There's too much surgery." But again, everybody has
Yeah.
their taste in shows. But like, what about Law and Order in terms of like the stories and the crimes? Like, is it the mystery of it? Is it the like what to you like makes it good?
Okay, so I think it is the fact that they'll have this crime that happened, and like obviously these detectives are trying to solve it, but like from the beginning of the episode you're like, I already know what's going to happen. Like in your head you think about, okay, I know who did this, I know what happened, I know what happened. But then it usually goes that way, and then it'll have like a small little turn or something where it's like either it does happen the way that you think it is going to happen, like it is predictable, or sometimes they'll throw in like a little twist where it's like, oh no, like, you know what I mean? So it's like the story and then the twists and turns along the way, and then like the outcome, and then knowing whether you were right or wrong
Mm-hmm.
at the end. So I think it's that. It's also the characters are pretty good. Like, I mean, Olivia Benson, iconic. Um, she's a great like detective, and then like she takes over the squad, and like she gets promoted so many times because she's like this great like detective. She's really good at her job and just like never leaves her job. And also like Detective Stabler, like he has like this like attitude about him. Like he's always angry and always like fighting like the perps and like always beating somebody up. Finn, played by Ice-T, always has like these one-liners. He's always trying to be cool. Detective Munch and his like conspiracies. And yeah.
So it's the mystery of like solving the circumstances of what happened. Like it's not even necessarily like solving the crime itself, but it's more like because I notice a lot of the episodes, like the crime already happened. Like they find a body, they find something, and it's basically retracing those steps of like going back and finding out what happened. And sometimes they'll have a suspect who it looks like they're obviously guilty, and then other times it's like somebody you don't expect, or other times it's sort of like it is the person that you have this hunch about,
right?
And so they're basically trying to figure out if they have the right person, if it matches the evidence that they have. But you're also saying it's the characters as well, right? The actors, the detectives. So they're just as important for you, like in terms of the story. Like it's just the combination of those characters and them working to solve cases. But do you think it's also like the fact that they've been doing it for so long? Like they're like you're saying that iconic. You use the word iconic. Like the fact that they've been doing the same role for a long time sort of lends to that.
Yeah, I think
that
so.
Following.
Yeah, because you definitely see like their whole career just kind of like develop now. Because now Olivia Benson is not just a detective, like she's like lieutenant or sergeant or whatever. So she keeps going up in ranking. Also the same thing with Finn, like he keeps going up in ranking as well. Then they also like take away characters, they add new characters. Like if you see the squad from like season 1, it's definitely not the same as it is like right now in season 20. So there's all these characters that come and go. Also with the DAs, with their like therapists, like their ME, their medical examiner, like it's just all like different. And then also like SVU always has these like special guest stars. Pretty famous ones. So that always adds something to it. So it's just all that. It's just a combination of everything.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned House.
Yeah.
And I felt like that there's a lot of those similar elements in the sense that like there's like this mystery and solving, basically a puzzle. Like that was House's character was this flawed, brilliant but flawed, I would probably say, is like if you had to narrow it down to like 3 words, like what was his character about? Like brilliant but flawed. Like so he's really intelligent, but he has problems with friends, with relationships,
with addiction.
Right. And then he like is solving these, like that's his like he basically like lives to solve these puzzles in the form of like, but the setting is like the medical setting, like whereas like Law and Order would be like they're solving like criminal cases, and they obviously like have a knack for them. Like we were talking earlier about some of like the good like your favorite episodes, and you mentioned one where Benson has just like this hunch of like to solve a case, and like nobody believes her, and she's basically fighting against everybody to like find this girl, right?
Yeah, right.
So she has like a knack for her job and for solving these cases. Similar to like House has this knack for like solving medical like mysteries pretty much. So is that like a genre, just like that mystery genre, like something that appeals to you, like in general? Like do you, like are there movies or other things where you're kind of like, okay, like I like trying to figure out like what happens?
I mean, I guess so. I mean, because okay, so Law and Order SVU, one of my favorite shows. House was one of my favorite shows. Um, in like that kind of genre, yeah, because like I can't watch like what is it, CSI? That for some reason doesn't interest me.
Mm-hmm.
CSI, all the branches of CSI, CSI Miami, CSI, they're basically the same show. Except like you think that okay, CSI would be about the crime scene part of it. You
Mm-hmm.
think that would be like really interesting. But for some reason it just doesn't like for me, it doesn't do anything for me.
There was that show Bones. Like I remember
Oh yeah, I
when
remember
House
that.
was really big, they would have like the first hour is House, and then right after was Bones. And sometimes I would watch it just to kind of like just because it was on. I never
Uh-huh.
really liked it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like, oh, like this is a really really good show, and I'm gonna watch it every week. Like if it was on, sometimes I would watch it, and sometimes I'd just be like, ah, I would just walk away.
Right.
I don't think I've ever like gone back to like watch that show in particular, but I felt like it was kind of the same, a similar concept. Like
Mhm.
they're trying to piece together. I don't know are they like anthropologists or something
Yeah,
like
I
that?
didn't understand what they were. Like I was like, okay, well, if they're examining like, you know,
Medical anthropologists or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
I was just like, okay, well, no, not interested in that either.
Yeah. Whereas like House, I would watch if like the new episodes were on, I would make sure to watch it that week, and
Mhm.
then years later, I think we have the DVDs. Like I would go
Yeah.
back and watch old episodes when it was on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's on there anymore. I would watch episodes just because I thought it was a cool
Mhm.
show.
Yeah, I mean, did you also try to like figure out what was I mean, obviously we're not doctors. So we wouldn't be able to figure out what the diagnosis was, but did you ever try to figure out like I think this is like what they have? Or like kind of just
Yeah, I mean a few
think about
times.
like, maybe with all these problems that this girl is having, maybe she just has an ear infection or something like that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I think that was one part of the show that I did like. I mean, trying to figure out, maybe not. I wouldn't use the phrase trying to figure out what they have. It was more like I want to see like what they
Yeah.
have.
You want
Like
to see
just
what the
the
diagnosis is.
reveal of like I want to see him solve it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't try to solve it myself,
Yeah.
but um, I think watching him at work and you know um, he was like a controversial doctor, and he like breaks all the rules, and
Hmm.
seeing him like solve it, um, there's some element of that that's kind of that was
Hmm.
kind of cool. And also just like you were mentioning the characters, like the personalities. I think that show in particular, because he was so I don't want to use the word like grating, but um, he would get into conflicts with a lot of people, and so seeing how that would how that would work, like
Hmm.
he's always trying to sneak behind Cuddy's back,
Yeah.
and then Wilson is like his friend, but like he doesn't treat him well, and it's sort of like he's still his friend despite him being a terrible
He was so
person.
mean to Wilson, but
And then like him like abusing the interns, and like um, but he would always respect like when people were right. Like
hmm.
that was like his virtue, was like if you were right, like then you were like good, you were on good terms with him.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you had his respect if you were correct.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean like that was part of the appeal of that show. But yeah, I think it's just like some shows you like those characters and the personalities, and I think it has a lot to do with like the actors. Hugh Laurie is just like a great actor, and so there's you to see him at work is was awesome. And I think for Law and Order, The fact that they've been on the show, like the main characters have been there for a long
Oh
time,
yeah.
I think speaks to how well they connect with their audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not if you're not liked by your fans, or you're on a show and people don't like your character, you're not going to be on that show for very long, or the show's not going to be on the air for that long. And
Yeah.
so the fact that they've had 15, 20 seasons or whatever the number is, I think that just speaks to how popular and stable that show has been for a long time. You mentioned how you say that it's sort of changed, like their careers develop, but do you think how the show works is different now? Like, and what I mean by that is, do you think it's no longer just like, okay, they find a body or whatever, they're solving the case, and then there's like the reveal at the end? Like, are there more episodes now where it's sort of like character focused? It's not about the cases, but it's about the people in the show? Or,
Yes. So I mean, I want to say that like from the beginning, it was like they used to have like how do I want to say this? So in the beginning, they used to give a lot of like fan service to everybody who wanted like Benson and Stabler together. So they would have a few episodes where like they would be in situations where they would have to be like close to each other, or they would like fight and then they'd make up again, or like something would happen to Benson and like he's like, oh, that's my partner, I gotta go and I have to go and save my partner or whatever. And then after he left the show, then it was like, okay, we don't have that anymore, so we're gonna give Benson a new partner, and he's gonna be just like a lot. So but what happens is like I think they took all that like fan service and then they turned it into like other things. Like now they'll focus on like Finn and his son. Like they'll have like some episodes where they focus on Finn has like a son and he's like gay, and then like he has like a hate crime against him and his friends or something like that. They'll have Rollins. That's a newer character, like in the later episodes, a newer character. And she transferred from, I think it was like Georgia or something like that, from like a Georgia police department, and she has a gambling addiction. So they have a few episodes about her and her gambling addiction, how she gets in trouble with those people that she owes money to. There's like a her partner, Detective Amaro, like he's got issues with his wife, and he's got anger issues, like stuff like that. So they went and they took like,
it seems like those characters are more flawed than maybe the previous ones.
I mean, if you think about it, like like those police characters a lot of the times are like flawed in general. So I mean, I think that's what makes them good, because so far, I mean, like what we've seen with House was a really good character because he was a little, I don't want to say off, but he was a little unstable. So you add that plus like a stressful job, that makes for a really good show.
Right.
I guess. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it kind of reminds me of I don't know if you've seen this series, but True Detective.
No, I
haven't. True Detective season 1, it was with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. This was like peak McConaughey renaissance when he was like right before he won his Oscar. And he was like in all these like big movies, Dallas Buyers Club, Magic Mike. He was like sort of trending away from like the rom-com McConaughey into the actor that that he is now. Um, and so it's basically about detectives in different. So each season is a different story with different actors, and so in season one, McConaughey and Harrelson are partners in Louisiana, but they're like very flawed characters, and just like the nature of the crimes are really traumatic, and there's like this whole conspiracy, and it takes place over decades. Season two was not as popular, but it was with Rachel McAdams, Taylor Kitsch, Colin Farrell.
Ooh, Colin
And
Farrell?
yeah, and they're even more flawed. So it's basically about them dealing with their issues, but also dealing with like systemic, political, and like social problems and corruption on a large scale. And so, but in those, I think what has made that series so great, especially season one, where everybody was just like, everybody loved season one. I liked season two also, but it was not very well received. I thought it was good, but
I'll have to watch it only because I
yeah,
love Colin Farrell.
yeah, he's really good in True Detective season two. But what's fascinating about that show is that, first of all, each season is a different. It's like an anthology, so it's a different story, different actors. And actually, season three is coming out this year, or 2019. And Mahershala Ali, who is a great actor, he won an Oscar for Moonlight.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he went to my school. He's a St. Mary's alum.
No way.
Yeah, he went to St. Mary's, and he was in House of Cards. Like, he's a phenomenal actor, and so he's gonna play one of the detectives, I believe. So I'm really looking forward to that. But again, it's because I think just seeing, you think of like police and like their role as like the law, and it's interesting to see people play those characters where it's sort of like they're having trouble like at home. They're having you mentioned like gambling addictions with the Law and Order, one of the Law and Order characters. Yeah. So it is fascinating to see that side of it. Like, I think it gives it more texture and color to just like than just like, okay, here's a mystery, let me solve it. So I can see like why that makes it more interesting, especially perhaps in the later seasons. And again, like, I haven't really seen a lot of episodes, but I brought up the one that I saw recently, and I thought the reason I thought that one was interesting was because it was based on like true events or events that happened in the news. And I think that's one cool thing that I do like about Law and Order, is that they talk about issues that are going on, because I think a lot of shows don't do that.
Yeah, like they have a lot, like Law and Order does this a lot, where they'll go and they'll take stories from the news and then they'll turn it into an episode, or they'll take like a couple of them and mix them together. They'll take something and then they'll mash it together with like another like a news story or like something that's going on in the world, and then they'll make an episode.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite episodes is like that one 911 episode where the little girl is like being kidnapped. Like, I think she was like being human trafficked or something like that. But what happens is like they keep her in this like basement, and so she ends up like finding a phone in the room, and so she calls 911, and they transfer it over to Benson because obviously she's like good at this stuff. So she talks to Benson, and then it's just like this whole thing of like Benson trying to figure out where this little girl is. Only that this little girl doesn't know where she is at all. She doesn't know where she is. She just knows that she's in a room. And like with all the technology that NYPD has, they can't figure out where the signal is coming from. I want to say like a burner phone or like a phone that's somehow connected where like you can't figure out where the signal is coming from. So yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes
Okay.
because like
So it's like minimal, like there's basically nothing to go on, like very minimal
yeah,
clues,
it's
and
basically
somehow she figures it out, right?
right. Yeah. So that one was a pretty good episode. Um there was another episode where oh yeah, the Rihanna episode. Like I don't want to say that one was one of my favorite episodes, but it was one of those episodes that actually like kind of got to me only because like the outcome of it was not as good as in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So they have like an episode based on like Rihanna and Chris Brown where obviously the Chris Brown like pop star guy beats up a like an up and coming singer who's supposed to like, you know, represent Rihanna, and she keeps going back to him after they like arrest him and then accuse him of rape and beating her up, and then she just keeps going back to him and going back to him after they're like, look, this is what he did to you, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not a good idea for you to go back to him. And she keeps going back to him, and then he ends up killing her. He ends up killing her because she didn't listen and didn't, you know, keep distance from him or didn't break up with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was a really good episode, but also just like super sad because in real life Rihanna lives and is now like, you know, living her best life. But in this episode,
The
it's like
what
what
if
could have
the
been.
like what if the worst happened
Yeah, what
in
if the
that
worst
situation?
happened? Yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of episodes like that. But yeah, there's a lot of like those kinds of episodes where they'll take stuff from like pop culture, or they'll take something from in the news, or you know,
So when they do that, so when they take incidents or events that have happened in real life,
mm-hmm.
you know, whether it's one incident or they'll take several and they'll combine them. Do you think they're sort of exploring just sort of like the social issues or discussions that happen around that event? Because I feel like, well, first of all, like of course they can't have it exactly like the events in real
Right.
life because they do have to have that separation and you know probably for like legal purposes. But
Yeah.
I feel like you know you mentioned like the Rihanna Chris Brown one. It was sort of like okay, like what if it had gone too far, and what if um, you know, she was, you know, seriously hurt or killed or was in that relationship and didn't leave and then the worst happened. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like when they do explore those like current events,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like a conversation about those issues that are brought up with that event.
Mm-hmm.
Like do you think that's something that they're trying to do, like encourage dialogue like amongst like pop culture when they do that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of times, like a major event will happen in the world, and you know, sometimes people are at a loss to kind of process it or talk about it, um, and a lot of times, like you know, the discourse on an event will only take place in like the news media, um, which so I think it's interesting that when a show like this take something and they sort of expand on it and say, well, what if this happened? What if this was involved there?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't think of many shows that do that, that talk about
Mm-hmm.
events and then, you know, put that out there for people to discuss, you know.
Right.
The only things that I can think of that are kind of close to doing that are not like dramas, but they're more like it's like overtly like political or
Mm-hmm.
social commentary or like comedians that talk about issues like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I think it's rare to see like a drama, you know, do that.
Right.
You know, outside of like a movie where, you know, you can take an issue and then explore it for like 2 hours. But um, Yeah, I think that like that's helped, at least in my view, it's helped it remain relevant and fresh, even though it's been on the air for years
Hmm.
and, you know, 15 plus seasons.
Yeah. Because
Um,
they'll have those too. And then also I think what also keeps it relevant too is that they've evolved, but they'll go into like cyber stuff. Like they'll go into like internet crimes and like human trafficking and things that happen on the internet. Like I mean the Slender Man one, the Glasgow Man,
mhm.
like that was like one of those internet what do we call them? Internet urban legends
Yeah.
or whatever. Like so they'll explore that. Um so I think that's what kind of like makes it um different from than what it used to be in the beginning.
Hmm.
So yes, they had like they still had these like true life crime stories, but then now they take it into like because they'll even say like I think there was like an episode where like they didn't really know what to do about like something that happened on the internet.
Hmm.
So they were just trying to like figure out how to work with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because I think like real life people are still struggling with how to handle, for example, like cyberbullying. Um, like I think what crosses the line between like trolling and bullying and stalking and abuse and like hate crimes or um, threats. Like
Mm-hmm.
those are all issues that are still being um, weighed out in like the legal system and in the public discourse. Um, so it's interesting that they themselves on this show like they're also struggling with um, those same issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how long do you think this is going to keep going on? Like, do you think it's sort of as long as the actors want to keep doing it, the job is theirs and they're going to do the show?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you think it's sort of winding down? Like, how do you see it?
I want to say that I would hope that it would keep continuing and it would keep evolving into like they kept doing what they're doing with the same kind of like from the news crimes and then mixing them together. um I also think that the show will continue as long as Mariska Hargitay stays on the show. um but
Mm-hmm.
also you never know, I mean she might leave the show and then like the head like the chief will be Ice-T. So I mean I guess it's just um I think the show will just keep going until they just can't do it anymore.
Okay,
Because they
so
can't figure out what to do with
okay,
everybody.
so like okay, for example, I think this show is a little bit different because I would think it could go on even if one star left.
Yeah.
If Ice T like was like, all right, I'm done, I'm gonna do something else, but everybody else like was like, okay, like we can probably still work with him gone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or if Marissa decides to leave or retire, um, they could probably still work around that. Whereas other shows, I feel like once one of like the major cast members is like, I'm done. Sometimes that just
Yeah.
like the show's done. Like so, I think you're right in the sense that it can probably keep going as long as one or two of them decide to stay. They can
Yeah.
promote some of the younger actors up. Um, I think it's kind of like one of those shows where it's just gonna keep going for as long as they can keep it going. I think it can keep going on because part of what they do is like we were saying, they take current events and current issues and they'll have their little spin on it. I think that's sort of a unique thing about the show where it can keep it going for a while. And also like there's no, even though they have like the main characters, they're not like individually like indispensable. You know, like if one of them left, they can pick up the slack, you know.
Yeah.
And they can probably explain it away very easily by saying, "Oh, they got promoted, they got another job, they retired." Like there's very easy outs for that type of a show. Whereas in other shows, it's not so simple to kind of write off a character. Like if they're gone, it's sort of like what happened, especially if the story is like so wrapped up in that character's life, you know. So yeah, it'll be interesting at least to see how long they can keep it going. And you know, in my view, I think it's because it has such a big fan base. I think it can be, as long as the demand is there, I think it can go on for a while.
Oh yeah, I think so.
But I think the other thing is just like the crime aspect. Like there's always going to be demand for like a good crime show, you know. And the key is like having like we were saying earlier, the characters, you know, the development, the story, and it's the rare show that I think does all those things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I'm excited to see because I think it's coming in, like, next year, 2019. They are going to have a new Law and Order series, or I believe it's called Law and Order True Crime. And I can't wait to see that. Like, I know I'm going to watch that because that already has my interest. Like, okay, SVU does this whole thing where they'll take true crime stuff, and I'm already watching it. So I want to know how they're going to do this one and how they're going to make it, you know, how they're going to make this better or watchable. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that works. I think true crime stories have been popular, and I think they're growing just in terms of the demand for those. But yeah. But yeah, I think we had a good discussion about the show, and so I think I sort of come away with a better understanding of like why it's so popular.
Oh, yeah. Edit this out. Edit the part where I said it was Law and Order True Crime. It's Law and Order Hate Crime. Okay. That's what's gonna happen. So that's gonna be really interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, any final thoughts about Law and Order and what we were talking about?
Can't wait to see this upcoming Law and Order Hate Crimes. Hope that SVU keeps going on forever. I hope they finally give Benson a stable relationship. And I hope that they keep Finn for as long as possible for SVU.
All right. Those sound like reasonable requests. I know like the fan base for Law and Order is like everybody is so wrapped up in like the characters and the show, and I don't know what any of that means that you just said, but I'll take your word for it. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a Law and Order fan yourself, shoot us an email or something about maybe your favorite episodes. You know, what are some of the ones that you've seen where they talk about really like true crime events, and but yeah, feel free to reach out to us that way. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed our episode today. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.